The meeting of the Dudley-Charlton Regional School Committee is now in session. It is Wednesday, January 23rd. It is 7 p.m. We're at the Charlton Middle School, and we'll all stand for a pledge to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Good job. Approval of the minutes. I'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes of our regular meeting of Wednesday, January 9th. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Okay, discussion?
On page 2, the second paragraph where it says Mrs. Rabbit, that was actually Mrs. Antossi.
Okay.
I have one too. On page 5, halfway through, right before it gets to new business, it says Mrs. Terry agreed with the recommendation, but said the windows and doors of the elementary schools have not been altered since 1989 or 2000. I didn't know those dates, so I couldn't have possibly quoted those dates. But I did say, I wanted to add to that sentence that you can say altered in a long time is probably what I said. But then I wanted to say that should not go unnoticed, that we need to somehow address the air conditioning concerns at the elementary school in Charlton.
Okay, anyone else? Seeing none, all in favor? Motion carries, it's unanimous. That brings us to approval of the warrants, and we do have warrants this evening to be signed. Citizens Forum. Would anyone like to come up to address us this evening? Okay, and now it brings us to the school spotlight, Charlton Elementary School. Mrs. Pacheco?
Well, thank you. Thank you for having us today. This year, the kindergarten teams at both Mason Road School and Charlton Elementary have implemented the Focus K2 curriculum. Today, I have 6 friends, one from each of our kindergarten classes, to show you one aspect of the curriculum called thinking and feedback. We chose this as our student spotlight as it highlights nicely the foundational skills needed in project-based learning, which is the district's focus. I have a printout directly from the curriculum about this process for you to read at your convenience. Currently, the students are in Theme 2 called Animals and Habitats, and they are studying wolves. So we're going to let them come up. This is unscripted. And they are in kindergarten. I've never brought kindergartners to our student spotlight before. So they are going to knock your socks off. So first we have Luca, Luca, you're going to take one of the chairs from Mrs. Curl's class. And then the rest of them are going to act like just like we do in a classroom. It will be on the floor in the front. We have Sophia from Mrs. Gillespie's class. Sophie from Mrs. Procopio's class. Elena from Mrs. Bellery's class. Dylan from Ms. Soka's class. Alexandra from Mrs. Snow's class. And we have our kindergarten teacher, Ms. Soka, who's going to do just as she does in the classroom every day. She's going to lead the group in this. So we want to face them.
Just face them. Yep, so just like we usually do for thinking and feedback. Okay. All right, friends. So we're going to do a thinking and feedback today from Luca's painting that he did. Where did you do this, Luca? What studio were you in?
I was not a studio. I did it at my classroom, and I made a painting of a wolf.
So was it an art studio, maybe?
No.
No? Okay. So Luca's going to hold his wolf up, and our first step for thinking and feedback is, what are we going to do? Looking. So we're going to use our eyes to look at Luca's painting.
Can you really see it good?
Or do you want to switch? Thank you, Luca. All right. So we're going to go to our next step, which is noticing. And can you remind us what are our prompts for noticing, Luca?
I noticed that I see.
So those are your sentence starters when we do noticing. What do you notice about Luca's painting? Sophia, what do you notice?
I noticed that he used green for the grass.
That's a great observation. Dylan, what do you notice?
I noticed that he made big feet.
Sophie?
I noticed that he made a curly tail.
Oh, a curly tail. Very cool. Do you have something, Elena? Do you want to talk about the colors maybe he used? Do you notice anything about the colors? Alexandra, do you notice anything about the colors?
And there's why he put black, brown, and white.
Yeah, I noticed he used those colors too. Very good. I noticed that you used some pointy ears over there, and they're pretty big too. So we're going to go to our next step of thinking and feedback, which is listening. So we're going to listen to Luca describe his process of his painting.
This is my grass. I don't want to put it over the feet. I just want to put it over here. I was trying to make the feet go like that. Instead, they turned out round and big. But in that white is the white right there is the wet on the wolf's nose, and his eyes are closed. And there's I saw white over it, and then there's this, and then there was fur, and that's why I did this. And that's how the tail is when he's laying down. I did a picture like he's laying down. He's like this. That's amazing.
All right. Good job describing your process. I really like that, Luca. You did such a nice job. So our next step, my friends, is going to be wondering. Right? Wondering. You're right. Luca, what are our prompts for wondering?
How did you? I wonder why.
How did you? I wonder why. So what are your questions? What do you wonder about Luca's painting? Dylan, what do you wonder?
I wonder why he had his eyes closed.
That's a great question. Do you understand?
Because in the picture they were just born and their eyes were closed.
So it was just born. I understand. Sophia, what do you wonder? What are you wondering?
I wonder that you only used green, black, and brown. There's some white.
And some whites.
That's 4 colors.
That's 4 colors. You used quite a bit of colors there, Luca. Sophie.
I wonder how he made the dark brown and the light brown.
Oh, that's such a good question.
I didn't make dark brown. It was just a lot in there, and then it kind of made dark brown. But then when it went out, it made light brown.
So you kind of did some color mixing a little bit, didn't you? A little bit.
So it didn't make color mixing.
No, you didn't do that. It's okay. All right, so our next step for thinking and feedback is going to be our suggesting and inspiring. Luca, you want to tell us our prompts?
Did you think about, I'm inspired to, I might try.
So let's think about either a suggestion, which is something that Luca might add to his painting to make it even what?
Better.
Even better. Do you have a suggestion, Elena?
I'm inspired to try that.
You're inspired by Luca's painting. What are you inspired to try about that?
I'm inspired to try to make a wolf like that.
That's a great inspiration. That's something you might try tomorrow in K2. Dylan, do you have a suggestion or an inspiration for Luca?
I'm inspired to try making fur.
You're inspired to try making fur. Very cool. Yep, Sophie?
I next time maybe he should make a sky.
So you're giving Luca a suggestion?
Oh yeah, I plan to do a sky. I must have forgot.
That's okay. So if you go back to art or whatever center you did that in, you might add a sky. So what do you want to say to Sophie for?
Thank you for that suggestion.
Sophia?
Next time I will try doing all 4 colors.
Oh, you want to use all 4 colors just like Luca. So you have an inspiration too.
Yeah.
I'm inspired to go back and try to draw a wolf for my friends and maybe make some really big pointy ears. I really like that about your painting, Luca. Anyone else have a suggestion or inspiration? No? Can we give Luca a silent cheer for his amazing wolf work? Nice job, bud. Roxanne.
So that is what a thinking and feedback session is all about in Focus K2. And there's some great kids here.
friends, ready? We can go out.
Communications. This evening, I do not have any. Any of our members have communications? No. Anybody? Okay. We're moving right along. We skip the superintendent's report. Student rep report, Kaylee?
Thank you. This weekend, Illusion, their all-female group for show choir, they went to Mill City and they won grand champion in their division. Fantasy won second runner-up at Mill City, and Anya Grondowski and their quintet for Illusion, they won a judges award, and Sean Scanlon also won a judges award for best performance. The drama club will be performing their winter play this weekend, and 2 pieces of artwork will be represented for Shepherd Hill at the New England Secondary School Art and Design Competition at Anna Maria. In athletics, Shepherd Hill alumni Chris Lindstrom, he graduated from Boston College. He attended the Reese's Senior Bowl, and he's anticipated on being drafted into the NFL soon. The boys and girls 4x200 both broke the school record at this meet this past weekend. And Brian Santos Ramos also continues to break records again. He now has the record for the fastest 55-meter dash in Massachusetts ever. And then Miss Griffiths and Miss Rassicott up at Shepherd Hill will be collecting dresses for their annual prom swap. And there's a new club up at Shepherd Hill called Model United Nations that was created by juniors to stay informed on world organization and politics. Here at Charlton Middle, their show choir Mirage, they also went to Mill City and they received a gold award for their show Lost in the Jungle. And Gianna Clouthier won Best Female Vocalist. And in our community, t-shirts, thank you. T-shirts are being sold in support of the custodian here, Mr. Rivera. He is battling non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. He was diagnosed this past December. And tickets are also on sale for $25 for the Kick Cancer's Butt benefit on Saturday, March 2nd at Indian Ranch, also in support of Mr. Rivera. And that is all I have for tonight. Any questions? And I'd also like to wish Mrs. Allen a great happy birthday. Her birthday was yesterday.
Thank you, Kaylee.
Thank
Any
you.
questions for Kaylee? Okay. And that brings us to new business. So this evening, I will take first the report of the Superintendent Search Committee, the announcement of the superintendent candidates, and discussion. And I am pleased to report that the Superintendent Search Committee has concluded its work, and this evening will be recommending to us the 4 finalists. And Elaine, you is the chair, so you can give us the report.
Pass this to you. And, let's see, Debbie LaFlaca. Thank you. On the behalf of the Superintendent Search Committee, I submit the following report for your consideration. The 13-member search committee met on 5 occasions. Wednesday, November 28th for orientation and review of open meeting law. Tuesday, December 19th to review applications received, which were 20, and semifinalist candidates selected, which were 8. We met on Saturday, January 5th to interview 4 semifinalist candidates. We met on Tuesday, January 8th to interview 2, and Thursday, January 10th to interview 2 semifinalists. At the conclusion of interviews on January 10th, the search committee entered deliberations and selected 5 candidates to move forward for your consideration. We were notified last evening that 1 candidate has requested that their name be removed from consideration. The 4 finalists recommended for your consideration are presented in alphabetical order. Dr. Julia Carlson, currently the Assistant Superintendent of Fall River Public Schools since 2017. Dr. Carlson is a graduate of the University of Texas, received a master's degree from the University of Hawaii, and a doctorate degree from Boston College. She is a resident of Providence, Rhode Island. Dr. Carlson began her career in education as a teacher of special education and held administrative positions as a vice principal and principal in Hawaii and Rhode Island. Jennifer Haggerty, currently the superintendent of Irving School Union 28 since 2015. Ms. Haggerty is a graduate of Fitchburg State College and received her master's degree from Fitchburg State University. She is a resident of Athol, Mass. Ms. Haggerty began her career in education as an elementary teacher and has held administrative positions as a Title I director and principal in various Northern Worcester County school districts. Stephen LaMarche is currently the superintendent of Bourne Public Schools since 2010. He is a graduate of Fitchburg State University and received a master's degree from Assumption College. He is a resident of Pocasset, Mass. Mr. LaMarche began his career in education as a special education teacher and has held administrative positions as an interim special education director, dean of students, principal, and director of accountability in various Massachusetts school districts. Dr. Michael Whaley is currently the principal at Burrville Public High School in Rhode Island since 2010. He is a graduate of the University of Rhode Island, received a master's degree from Providence College, and a doctorate degree from Johnson & Wales University. He is a resident of East Greenwich, Rhode Island. Dr. Whaley began his career in education as a science teacher and has held administrative positions as a dean of students, assistant principal, assistant to the director of curriculum instruction, assessment, and professional development in various Rhode Island school districts. At the conclusion of the interview process, candidates were informed of the anticipated next steps, which included Dudley-Charlton Regional School District representatives doing site visits to their current school district and the invitation to visit us. We did not share anticipated dates for interviews, as this had yet to be discussed by the full school committee. The finalist candidates were informed that the date of the committee's deliberation and decision is February 27th, in accordance with our published timeline. At this time, I would like to publicly thank the members of the Superintendent Search Committee, who included Kathy Kamignani, our school committee member who served as vice chair, Richard Matthew, finance director, Christopher Starshevsky, principal of Dudley Middle School, Kevin Foley, the DCTA union president, Lawrence Dunn, Shepherd Hill math teacher, Adrian Daniels, Dudley Middle School 5th grade teacher, Brooke Beverly, Charlton Elementary School Technology Integration Specialist, Jillian Anderson, CPAC co-chair, Randy Booth, Dudley parent and teacher, Allison Lawrence, Charlton parent, Catherine Fengler, student representative, and Carrie Saganowitz, Dudley Board of Selectmen. The passion and engagement all members brought to this process is a reflection of the commitment that all stakeholder groups have to the selection of the next leader of the district. They were thoughtful in their questions and deliberation. Collaboratively, we are presenting to the full committee 4 finalists that would serve the Dudley-Charlton Regional School District with dedication and integrity. I want to thank Tracy Novick, Field Director, and Glenn Kuchar, Executive Director of MASC, for their guidance and expertise as we moved through this process over the last 2.5 months. Their assistance was invaluable.
At this time, I take this opportunity to thank the members of the search committee for their participation in this process and for giving their time during several nights of interviews. Based on that work, I am confident that these candidates brought forward will be exceptional. Thank you.
Just as a follow-up to the process, there are 2 meeting minutes, obviously our last meeting on January 10th, that we need to have the meeting minutes approved, and I know there are some members of the committee that are here.
Okay.
If we
so
could take a moment to
could
do
do
that,
it.
and we missed a December 19th
Okay,
meeting.
so Elaine, you can take care of that, having them approved.
Sure. I don't know if you wanted to,
I'm all set to go forward this evening with the discussion. I'm going to set up the dates of our interviews and so on and what we're going to do, okay? Once you do that.
not a problem.
It was a nice report.
It was.
Good job.
Thank you.
Elaine, do we need to make a motion?
We do, I just want to make sure that everybody has had a chance to take a look. The committee members that are here, could I have a motion to accept the meeting minutes of December 19th and January 10th, please?
So moved.
In a second? Kevin? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Oops, I'm so used to
What did you say?
it. Erase my name.
Jillian.
I teach an old dog.
Okay, Allison. Cindy, I'll give you a name of who's here.
Are they all done, Kath?
There's 8 members here.
Are they all approved, Elaine? or you
They
have
are
to-
all approved.
Elaine, do you want to say anything else before we start the discussion? Were you going to say something?
I was actually just going to ask Tracy, as far as next steps are concerned, to be able to help us provide
Yeah, I have
information on
something for her to.
that. Sure.
Do for us, once I get to it, okay. All right, the first thing that's important is, I think we should get the dates, okay? And that will be, I was thinking, and if it's okay with the committee, to probably do the interviews on a Saturday, do all 4, if we all could make it. And I've got a tentative date, I had a tentative date, but Mary said she couldn't, but we've got another date. And that would be on a Saturday, February 2nd. How does the committee feel about doing that? Or we can do it for 2 evenings.
I did put a calendar inside the,
Yes, that's good.
I can only go till about 3 o'clock on that day.
On February 2nd,
Got the overtime.
is that
Okay.
enough?
that would be plenty of time. We could start,
Saturday.
yeah. So everybody agree on February 2nd? We'll
That is
do,
the show choir big thing, so we probably shouldn't be at the high school. That's their big choir, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it should be do people want to attend that?
They could probably be here, right?
But I mean,
Right.
if there's anyone
could
here,
probably be here.
anyone involved in that?
yeah,
At night.
It's at night.
There's
Oh, there
one
one's
at-
in the
there's one at
afternoon.
night.
Yeah, okay.
it's in the evening?
No, it's all afternoon, isn't it afternoon and night? Don't they have an afternoon and a night?
Okay, well, then we can't do it
At
there.
that school?
Well, we'll do it at Dudley Middle School?
Oh, here.
I'm not
Oh,
going
yeah.
to be here that day.
Oh,
Okay, we
okay.
have to go a
Then
different
we
day.
can't do it.
Maybe we should.
We can't do it on February 2nd, we can't do it on February 9th, because Mary couldn't make it. And then that brings us to vacation, so we can't do it on, both Saturdays.
I've also seen all the candidates, though.
I know, but
You
we
should
would
be here
want
for
you
the
here. Then that would bring us into March, if we're not going to try to make the deadline of February 27th. I did tell Dr. Nash, and we probably agreed that that is too early for us to hire the superintendent on the 27th. It would be a rush. But if we want to try to make that deadline, we can. Or, as Mary did say too, we can go into March.
The only thing I would worry about, and maybe Elaine and Tracy could pipe in, is that we have already lost one candidate, and I would hesitate
Right.
to put it out too far because I don't want to lose anybody
Okay.
else.
So then we'll have to do it 2 nights if we can't make it on a Saturday. And the tentative nights are, and Mary couldn't make it the other nights that I gave. So it could be Monday, February 11th, can you make it then? And February 12th, and that's a Monday and a Tuesday.
What time would you be starting?
I know on a Monday you said, could you make it?
No, I just wanted to give some possibilities of
Okay.
how to do it different than how we've done it in the past. All of the candidates that we're looking to interview are coming from quite a distance. We're looking for them to also do site visits. We could consider the possibility of doing a site visit with a community forum followed by an interview. And instead of doing night meetings, having an early interview maybe at 5 and doing 4 interviews at 5 o'clock, only 1 interview per day, and then doing our deliberations as a possibility. It might be difficult for all members to be here. We could look at Mr. Earl recording the meetings and then having those available so that the member missing could watch the interview process. And this is where I would ask Tracy to speak, based on our timing and our communication to the candidates. We are now also encountering the fact that other districts that could be potential interest to our candidates are also opening up searches. So to Mrs. Carmignani's point, we could lose candidates because other searches are opening up as well. So, we talked even in the subcommittee level about the possibility of moving the date. I think that if we're creative, we can look at some possibilities and maybe not doing it in the traditional format, but perhaps doing, the site visit, do the Q&A open to stakeholders in public, and then follow it with 1 interview instead of trying to do multiple interviews a night.
And I talked this over with Dr. Nash, and I like this better, but it's up to the committee. We would interview the 4, then have a discussion, and maybe if we eliminated 2, we'd end up with 2 left. Then those 2, we would have the site visits. They would come here to us on separate days. We would interview 4, and maybe we could if we liked all 4, then we would have all 4 come to the site visit. And if we wanted to screen it down to 2, we could, and then we would only have 2 come. So I prefer to do the 4, to interview them first, so I would know them, then have the site visits, but it's up to the committee.
Can I make one comment?
Go ahead.
February can get snowy, so I like Elaine's comment. If I hadn't been part of the process already, I would feel very strong that I would need to be at the final interviews, but I liked what you said about that I could sit there and watch I could watch it on, if it was taped. So if you had the day of February 2nd where you interview all 4 people, and then you had a snow day backup of the 11th and 12th, I think that would help you just to get some backup of a snow day. And then you can also, then if you can narrow it down, then we can have them come in, maybe if you had narrowed it down to 2 candidates or something, you could have them come in on the 25th and 26th of
Yeah,
February.
well, that was what I'm saying.
Yeah, exactly what you were saying, and then we would meet on the 27th. And
I
hopefully-
had that week that they were going to come in
Yeah.
for the site visit
Yep.
down. I thought they would come in that last week, and then we could make it for the 27th.
Yeah.
But I would like to interview the 4 first, narrow it down. If we do narrow it down to 2, then we only have 2 people coming in for the site visit right away. If we keep the 4, then we will have the 4. But I think I'd like to do it that way.
Just a consideration, one, I would like to bring Tracy in on the conversation since she's.
Well, Tracy,
does
I was going to
search.
have her set up the site visit, the groups.
And I'm happy to do that. I will say that one thing that generally recommend doing the site visit, particularly the site visit to the candidates' home districts ahead of time. In many cases, because they're going to actually potentially inform your interview questions. You may find the same thing in terms of the candidate actually visiting Dudley-Charlton, that in some cases that's actually going to raise community questions that you want to make sure that you follow through on the interview. If you do the process in reverse, you don't actually then have the opportunity to raise those questions at the interview. I entirely respect what you're saying because it is the bulk of the work is less the interview and more the site visits. On the other hand, in terms of the utility of the site visits, I think that the committee would find them more useful if they had those happen prior to your interviews. At least that's been our experience in the past in terms of districts choosing to do it one way or the other.
It's the wishes of our committee.
Absolutely.
We're in control. So we'll take a straw poll to see who wants to do the interviews first, then they come in for the site visit.
Can I ask a question before we do that? Can you give me a layout of what a site visit is going to consist of so that I can understand how it would benefit me asking questions or forming my questions?
Absolutely. So the site visit to the home districts of the candidates obviously can't be a quorum of the committee. But for those who go, we recommend that the candidates put together groups of people within the district who can actually speak to that candidate's experience. Our expectation would be that those visiting would have an opportunity to visit with at least some members of the school committee. If the person is currently serving under a superintendent, meeting with their superintendent, meeting with their central office staff, having some conversation with their principal, having some direct conversation with teachers, if possible parents, because this usually does happen during the day, and also if possible students and municipal members. We then would do the same thing again here, giving those candidates a chance to visit all the schools first of all. We would ask that the principals escort the person around the school so they actually get to see the district and see the facilities, as well as get a feel for what the district feels like during the school day. Generally recommend that the district plan on holding some form of a community really more of a social hour so that people can actually meet the candidate in a less formal setting. In many cases, that's then done prior to an interview. And that gives sort of anyone who wants to meet the candidate a chance to do it. It can also be an easy lead-in to then people being able to stay for the interview if they wish to.
And Jamie, we can do one or the other. If we don't go to their school, they're going to come to our school, and you'll get to see them here, or we can do both. But we can do one or the other, too. We can choose just to have them come here.
Okay.
Okay? But I think we're going to take a straw poll on are we going to interview the 4 first before we do the site visits?
Before you do the straw poll, can I ask another
Go ahead.
question? Is there anything about, like, I do see the value of getting input from our community members after a site visit, and I think that it could bring up some more questions.
Yeah, well, that'll probably be in the evening, at the end of the day, that we'll have that group where the candidate's going to be there, and we have a chance for people to come in. Am I right?
Yeah,
MASC?
but-
We'll have a chance for people to come in and ask questions of the
So
candidates.
my question to you, Chair, would be, would we be able to then have, if you're going to have preliminary interviews to kind of take it to 2, are we then having final interviews on the 27th with the 2 people to answer any other questions we may have that linger?
I will say that if you were going to do that, that's actually a change of the format that you've
Okay,
set up
that's my question.
the expectation that everybody, including the final candidates, have for your experience. Yes.
Okay.
All right.
If we were going to do site visits first, given that it's the end of January already, wouldn't that bring us to the end of February before we could actually interview them?
I spoke, so I've spoken with all of the candidates, in some cases more than once. They understand that you didn't have dates actually set, but my conversation with them was for them to be prepared to start pulling together site visits in their home districts as early as next week. So I am planning on speaking with all of them tomorrow. And if there are members of the committee who are prepared to do that, my expectation would be that we would be able to take care of that, if that was the committee's wish, next week, and if necessary, the week following. And the candidates are prepared to come in as early as the week of the 11th for interviews. So that was my sort of preliminary sketch out, again, always allowing for both snow and school vacation weeks for them. So they don't have set dates, but I did outline those weeks as things that they should be prepared for. They also all have some idea of what the expectation would be for a site visit.
We'll be looking at the 11th and 12th, like we originally said then.
Or the 12th and 14th, to be safe, in case.
Not the 14th.
Not the 14th. We're not going to do that to them either.
I think the better idea is to get them in on that last week before the 27th. If we narrowed it down to 2, that's when, as far as you said, if there's a snow day or something, and
I
gives
think
us
we
time.
might, probably should ask, is there anyone who wants to go on a site visit first? I mean, who would be going on those visits? I know you went the last time, yeah. Is anyone else be going on
There's
those?
3.
And work around your schedule and see what
Well,
that comes.
If I could just, through the chair, add some information. I know in the search committee, pretty much all of the members, Mr. Matthew included, expressed interest, if their schedules allowed, to go on the site visits if that was the wishes of the committee, that I know Mr. Starshevsky was interested, our Catherine Fengler, our student rep, I know Brooke Beverly mentioned it, I believe Kevin Foley mentioned it, that if there were people that needed to go, there would be multiple ways of getting insight from those particular people. As a possibility, I, would look to just share with the committee how we communicated with the candidates. So to tag on to what Tracy has said, we did communicate that we were moving this process before school vacation. So we were looking to do site visits there, we were looking to do site visits and they were fully aware that we were looking to do our deliberations on the 27th. So that was the time frame that we set with candidates. I just want to share a concern that I have I personally am prepared and would like to do site visits both in and out prior to interviewing. I do think it frames questions that asked. Site visits are very informative, maybe not what you do hear, but what you don't hear, which would be questions that I would like to explore in the interview process. My fear is that if we interview and then don't invite all candidates back for site visits, we are technically eliminating them from consideration. We could then come down to a limited pool of candidates and not successfully negotiate, have a person accept and successfully negotiate. I would like to leave the pool intact through the interview, through the site visit interview process, and then do the elimination at the deliberation piece. That's my opinion.
Well, you were most involved with it, so I would go with what you feel. If you want to take some of the search committee people with you, this will all be done next week. Is that when you'd started, Tracy? Starting next week, people are ready for you?
We'd have to, at this point in time, see who has availability. I think we have to coordinate. I feel that it's important to have a full assessment, as I did in 2014, as I went to site visits for all 4 locations. I like to have that basis of comparison. I'm willing to commit that time.
Well, how about when they come here? Before the interview? Is that was your recommendation?
My recommendation is that they come before the interview, so the 4
here
candidate pool is
too?
whole.
Before the interviews come to us too? You're going to go to them and they're going to come to us?
That does impact the interview schedule. So in talking about it, then maybe we're looking at interviewing, we might not be able to get that all done until Tracy calls and coordinates. I don't know, you could look at the 11th and 12th being site visits day for 2 of the candidates. So you could site visit here on the 11th and 12th, and they would be the first candidate to be interviewed that evening, and then open up days for the other 2 candidates to come in, and then they would be your second interview on the 11th and 12th. So there's ways strategically, Tracy did all of the scheduling for us to do this so that we could effectively try and work through that. The only dilemma that we have is if the weather's bad and it snows and we don't meet any of that criteria, we need to push back. And then we have the 25th and the 26th.
And to your point, Elaine, I think that you could potentially do those if we followed what you're proposing, the second scheduled candidates for those interviews could have had their site visits the end of the prior week.
Yes.
As long as that works for the district.
So I think to some degree, I think we need to have options and then allow Tracy to schedule and see what happens. And if we want to target the 11th and 12th, then we could target those days of doing the interviews, including a site visit those days, for those people that can make that commitment, and then try and get the other 2 site visits in the week of the 4th. And then if we're able to go out and do 1 or 2 site visits next week, then that only leaves 2 more that we fit in. So maybe the site visits we do are the candidates that are coming here on the 11th and 12th doing site visits. So I think it's possible to be done. And then we would have the 25th and the 26th as backup days if we run into snow issues.
Everybody agree to that?
So our goal is the 11th
Jamie?
and 12th, and then work
Yes.
before that backwards. That's what I would say. We should set up when the full committee meets, and then work around the other stuff, I would say.
Okay.
So what are our dates, 11th and 12th? Is that
11th and
2
12th.
each night, or starting at what time would it be? I can't be there before 4:30, but
What time can we start? As early as possible. She can't be
I can't be
until
before
4:30,
4:30.
so start at 4:30? Okay. We'll start, and each interview is an hour?
Right, yes, and then
An
you want to
hour,
give yourself
and
a
then
break.
15 minutes in between?
Mhm.
Okay.
Yep.
So it'll be on the 11th and 12th?
I thought those were I'm sorry, I thought the 11th and 12th were the site visits.
She wants it on, we're doing it on the same
What
day.
I'm saying is the site visits here,
Here.
Okay.
2 candidates could actually do their site visits,
On
do
the
their
same day?
community forum in the afternoon, be the first interview, and then you have 2 candidates that are completely done, site visit and interview.
Okay, so
The
you're having
remaining
2
2
visits come in on the
candidates-
same day?
I'm sorry?
You're having 2 candidates come in on the same day?
No. 1 candidate on the 11th
Yeah,
would come in and do a site visit.
Yeah.
They would be your first interview on the 11th.
okay,
Another candidate will come in for the second interview that had site visited the week before.
oh, got it.
And then
Okay,
on the
thank you.
12th, you would repeat.
Okay, got it.
And that would help with the people that,
Yep.
there are a couple people that are coming from, the gentleman that's coming down from almost the Cape, from the Cape.
Right,
It would make it much more condensed
got it.
for him.
Okay.
Just what you said with having it on the same day, since they are coming from, like, the Cape on the 11th, how far apart are the times are you talking about? If you're having the site visit in the morning, and then you have afternoon, and then there's, 5 hours in between, are they just gonna stay here during that time?
That's not usually a problem.
Okay.
I mean, for example, as those who run the search committee know, most of them have already been in and around both of
Okay.
the towns, and so
Yes.
giving them some sort of space is usually not an issue.
Okay.
Yes, good question, though.
Now, do you have the date for the other 2? Because you said one is going to be on the 11th, and one is going to be interviewed on the 12th, right? Am I right?
And then a second, if we're going with what Ms. Rabbit
If we
said,
go with 4,
so then there would be a second interview after that on the 11th and on the 12th, and those people would have done their site visit in Dudley-Charlton during the prior week.
okay, but you don't have a date yet for that prior week.
My suggestion would be to try to keep it towards the end of that week, although I'm also sensitive to the fact that we're going to be packing Dudley-Charlton's schedule as well in terms of the superintendent. But that would be my intent would be to look at the 7th and the 8th to get them into the district so that everyone's sort of information is kind of fresh in your minds.
Okay,
we
but
also
we
then-
will be doing 2 interviews on each evening?
On the 11th and the
11th and 12th? Okay.
Yes.
And what are those times gonna be, just so we know, what would you start them?
So if you can start at 4:30, what I would suggest, again, thinking of distance and lateness of hour and so forth, you might consider starting at more like 5, giving you that time, maybe 4 to 5 or something like that if you want to do a community time. Taking the 5 to 6, giving yourself a break, and doing 7 to 8, and that way no one's, even if you run over, you're not going too late into the evening for people who need to go farther away.
I would
Does that
think we
work?
would start at 4:30, because if these people are from far away, we should, and Kathy is the, one that can't get here till the latest, we should start it right away.
They also may not be able to get here, depending on what their schedule is.
Well, if they've been doing site visits here.
Only one of them.
One of them will come the last
Only
week.
one is,
But if I heard you correctly, when I was writing down the times, it would be 1 hour, so if we went 4:30 to 5:30, we gave a 15-minute break, we started the next one,
Yeah.
5:45 to
right,
6:45.
yeah, because one will be
That's
here
enough
anyway.
time.
It's not enough. I'm just gonna, I will tell you, through 8 interviews, an hour wasn't necessarily enough for all. So how we did it is we had an hour, we had a 15-minute window, which allowed for a little bit of overflow for some questions. The candidates came in, they were very well prepared, and they were very thorough answers, so they weren't short. We didn't have extra time. I would just turn around and say that on my thought, if you're doing a community forum, I personally, if I were a candidate, would want time to separate for a little bit and collect myself and have a little bit of a break and a rest before I then went into an interview process. Because you've basically been in a situation where you have been doing Q&A for an hour plus with staff, with administrators, with community members. I would want a little bit of a breather before I then came into this forum interviewing for a job that I'm very interested in. That's just my thought. I think 5 o'clock is a good time to start. Just on, my opinion, it's the wishes of the committee. If we did 5 to 6 and then started the second interview at 6:15, we wouldn't have a break in case you needed to go over. you know, there's a lot to kind of talk about as to how you wanted to approach it. And maybe those details will get worked out at the next meeting, but that's just my thought. I would consider doing 5 o'clock. Those other people that are working, that are coming from a distance, that have to deal with rush hour traffic, we're also now giving them a little bit more time to get here.
The only other consideration the committee might want to make is that this is obviously a big decision for the community. I know there are communities that don't wish to start public meetings any earlier than 7 or something like that. I don't know what the general standard is for Dudley-Charlton. I don't know how many people are working out of town in the community who might want to be trying to get back to things. That would be another thing to consider, though, in terms of what is sort of those who are not on the committee who are interested, what are their needs as well.
I wouldn't want to go that late, though. We could be getting those people to have to get home unless they're going to stay overnight. If we start at 7 o'clock, that's pretty late, don't you think? I'd rather start at 5.
Community one.
Give them a chance to get home.
So, 5 o'clock. Okay.
Whatever.
I mean, it's our call.
So we're saying 5 and 6:30?
6:15, I guess, right? Would you say 6:15?
I thought you said you didn't think there was enough time, so.
I think we need to leave a half hour between. I don't know. I would say 5 and then 6:30.
There's, through the chair, there's ways that you can approach this. So, when we interviewed in 2014, our candidates were given an assignment, homework per se, of something that they had to do to come in. Our candidates for the search were asked to write a personal statement as part of their application process. So you might be looking for that. And what we found, and Mrs. Camignani, you can speak to this, we gave our candidates an opportunity to make an opening statement, to put the person to the paper. Some of them were quite verbose. And then we had prepared, each member of the committee had prepared 2 questions in the event that we were running through the interviews really quickly. We got through everyone asking 1 question, and then having time for, if there was a clarifying question that the candidate wanted to ask us regarding the district, and then to allow them to do a closing statement. In most interviews, if I'm correct, went anywhere from an hour to about an hour 7, an hour and 8 minutes. We had maybe like a 5-minute bathroom break before we went into the next one. Out of the 8, there was possibly 1 that was on time for 1 hour, but all the other candidates could have gone longer than the hour, just on each of us asking 1 question. Now with, you know, an 8-member committee, if Kaylee is coming and is participating, which our student reps have done in the past, that, you know, we have an ability to maybe ask 8 questions with follow-up, or have everybody ask 2 questions. Those are things that we can kind of discuss how you want to move forward as to whether or not you feel that an hour is sufficient. Then we work within that time frame. I think we need to have a little bit of a cushion. Just if there's something that's left and needs to be explored, I think
And we
it's
don't
best that
want
we
to
have
be
that ability.
repetitive for what you did
Correct.
in the search.
Right. So I know that Tracy was planning, what we had done for the search was she created a Dropbox, and she put the applications up there. So, you know, I provided you tonight the resumes and the applications, but if you want to go back and look at the educational credentials and all of that, she creates a Dropbox. She could upload, 'cause what we did in the search committee was that she created a booklet for us, and the booklet had everyone's questions. It had a place for us to take notes, and it had, you know, a rating scale, so that as we went through the process, we were taking notes, and we had all of that done. So we had that as a reference tool to think and consider what we had heard. She could provide you the 26 questions that had been prepared for the search committee, knowing full well that 13 of them had been asked, but the other 13 of them that we didn't use were also very good. So it could
We would
provide
like
some.
at least,
Absolutely, some inspiration for that. But I feel that, you know, we may want to go deeper and more specific to things and skill sets that we said that we were looking for, that you might want to explore. So she can create the Dropbox. I'm sorry, I forgot to finish that thought, but she can create the Dropbox, have all the resumes up there, have the interview questions, and then the MASC documents that we used as our guiding tool as we were putting the process together, so that we could then, when we meet on the 13th, make our decision on potentially a writing prompt and, or homework assignment, whatever you want to call it. They're all of them talked about their entry plan.
You want to do the same thing though, again, give them a writing prompt and,
You would need to decide that ahead of time if you're going to interview them on the 11th and 12th.
Right. Sorry, thank you, Tracy, that's why we have her here.
since they've been through it.
Right, well, they all discussed their thoughts on entry. So what we had done in 2014 was to discuss an entry plan. So that's not a new and novel thought for them. They all discussed it in their interview as to what they thought. It was actually one of the questions that they were asked. But, you know, interestingly enough, they all had varying experiences when they were asked the question of what would you do in a crisis? And they had different experiences and how they handled it. So, you know, it's really up to the committee's consideration. It's somewhat of a standard operation that you would ask writing. It's how you judge someone's quality of thought in their written production. They are representing the district. It's something that you might want to see more examples of than other than their resume and their personal statement. It's just a thought process.
And just to clarify, we did not ask them for a writing sample,
Right,
so they have not been asked yet by us.
correct.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I
They
thought
They
you
didn't.
were,
Right.
you had asked them,
No,
and then
no,
I said,
no,
they've been
no.
through it,
No, they
so
haven't.
it would be.
No, Pauline, they weren't.
Okay.
So it would be,
Oh,
it would be,
okay.
it would be the
That's-
first time.
I thought you, oh.
Mm-mm, no. We did have a couple of candidates that did come in with ancillary materials to expand on their background. And I'm sure, similar to our 2014, people will come in with more information, but specifically, it might be worth thinking of a question that we would want to ask them to
Right,
explore.
Because we did
Right.
the last time.
Right.
And we talked too about not necessarily a question, but maybe a scenario.
Yeah, we were kind of, you know, thinking about this, maybe we should test them in the MCAS short essay format of giving them 3 things and saying, write a paragraph on the 3 things versus something that maybe they've already prepared for a different scenario and they just need to change a few words out, but submit us something that's typically submitted. But if we were to take something that would be maybe 3 short bursts instead of 1 full thing, maybe that would be a different approach. Because I just think of the amount of things that we've been through over the last couple of years. Our past superintendent, Mr. Desto, on many occasions had to answer questions under crisis, and that was, you know, a real testament to being able to think swiftly on your feet and write well. And maybe that's something that we need to continue to see, that skill set's there. Just a thought.
Okay.
And the other thing is that if you wanted to have a booklet prepared that actually had your questions along with space for notes and so forth, that's something I could do. Since you can't collaboratively decide without it being a violation of the open meeting law, if each of you wanted to get in touch with me with your question, that way I can screen for there not being doubles. And we can put that together ahead of the interviews if that's the will of the committee.
And Mrs. O'Coin, for you, what I had done with Tracy with the questions is we went through them and we created a flow. So we weren't jumping topics, we just kind of did that, but she and I collaborated once the questions had been turned in, and then created the flow, and that's how she produced the
Well, that's what I
booklet.
want to do with the questions,
Mhm.
so.
Good.
Right. So,
So, you're going to give us some questions, and the committee can make up their own if they want, and then,
Yep.
yeah.
Absolutely. What I can do is I can share with you the same document that the search committee had, which is MASC sample questions, which
And do you have samples of writing?
we don't. Those tend to be very district specific.
Okay, so.
When they're
We'll
done,
think
yes.
about those.
Yep. You would, if that is something that, well, the
I
committee
think
can't
we'll
really
think of
decide
it.
without you doing it
Yeah,
together.
Dr. Nash said she's going to help us too.
Okay.
She did send me an email, and we have some samples, and we'll see what the committee thinks of them.
So just a process question, if we are gonna have those interviews on the 11th and 12th, then after that is when we would call references? Is that what you were saying before? And then,
Oh, that's my next, because MASC did not call any references, right? The letters of recommendation. Do you normally call, like, the chair of if we're hiring a superintendent, that's a superintendent, you would call the chair to see how her letter of recommendation?
We do. We also draw on the information we have in the districts, because we are statewide. We tend to actually have some pretty good ground information for each of the districts.
I remember the last time we did call the district when we saw their letter of recommendation, and you did speak with someone and to check the references. So do you normally do that?
I'm happy to do that on behalf of the committee, or the committee can choose to have one of you do it.
Mary said she would
Sure.
like to do that.
Okay.
So, wonderful.
I believe that you will find the information is actually in the information we have, but if it's not, you can certainly get in touch with me, and I can make sure that you get what you need to get in touch with people.
Which information that we have?
If you're going, you will, not from necessarily the information that you have tonight, but the information that is actually in the full application that we already have electronically for each of them.
Okay.
So I think we can probably make sure that
And I
you
don't have access to that right now?
Not this second, no. I'm going
Okay.
to set that up tomorrow. Yeah.
Okay. And then where do we go for that?
For
To
what
get
I
the
will,
access to the,
what I will do is you will get an email from me that has a link,
okay,
which actually then will have a folder for each of the candidates electronically.
okay.
As Ms. Rabbit was already saying, I can also make sure that you have the questions that were not asked by the search committee, and I can also put in the same folder, if you'd like, the MASC sample questions, that you can use that to consult and as you're
Okay,
considering
good.
your own questions.
Thank you.
Sure.
Okay. So is there anything else? It seems like we've covered everything. So we should be all set. We have to have the
I'm going to say,
date.
he's going to make the site visits in the towns they're going to. Are you going to take care of that?
Right, so
Well,
my
who are you
my
gonna-
only
No,
question.
but I mean, what people are going.
Absolutely, so I don't want to take up your meeting time for that, but those of you who want to do that, if you can share with me, I think you all have my contact information, but if you don't, I can share it again with you. But if you can share with me what days, it would be during the school day, next week and the week after you have available, and that way I can see what overlaps and set it up from there. Thank you.
So I have a card. Is your email on the card?
It should be.
Okay.
Do any of you not have my card? I mean, it's very simple. It's tnovick@masc.org.
We can remember that.
Just a clarifying question on the questions. Are we just submitting them to you as a whole, or I was just going to say, do we want to take 15 minutes on either the 6th or the 7th to just deal with the issue of whether or not all of the questions are done so that Tracy can compile the booklets for the 11th? It's just a thought, since we're meeting twice for budget that week, we could just have under the agenda in case anybody has any questions or clarification on that, you want to review them. We did review, we had some overlap of questioning that we took those questions back to those people to refine them so that it wasn't an issue. I know people on this search committee picked their area that they wanted to ask questions about. So just as a thought, we could just put it on the 7th or the 6th, just in case there's anything.
Or should we just submit them to Mrs. O'Coin and you can forward them to Tracy and put them
Yeah.
all together like
Yeah.
that?
That's
You
fine.
did that before for the interim, didn't we?
I did that.
I just want to know what we're
Yeah.
doing.
Yes,
Yeah,
just,
I
that's
think
what
just
I
submit
was,
them to Mrs.
that's what I
O'Coin.
came in with. I was going to say, submit them to me, I'll compile them, and I'll give them to Tracy. And so what date do you want them in by?
We want to
had
have them
said-
after
How
at least
soon?
the away site visits.
What's
So
the date?
so today is the 23rd, so we want to give you the next, so why don't we say that you want to have them in by the 8th?
By the 8th is fine. Questions? Eighth, and I will submit them to you, okay?
Great.
And Elaine, you said you were interested in going on a site visit, and Stephanie is. And Jamie, okay. And that's it. Okay.
Are you opening it up to the search committee too, though? You opening it up to everybody?
Oh, wait a minute, I think we have enough.
Well, I don't know, you said, Mrs. Rabbit, you said some of the search committee people wanted to go on those site visits, right?
There were people that were interested. I know there are people that are here. And it really is based on their scheduling, their obligations, and their building, if they can go. But I think if Mrs. Terry, Stephanie, Mrs. Reed, and I just take a minute after the meeting to look at schedules, we can send dates that the three of us are available.
Yeah.
And then we could send it out if you agree, and if people
I
want to
think-
go, they
yeah,
can
I
say.
think the school committee, the three, you
Okay.
know. And Mary and I had said, but I don't think Mary can walk, right?
Too soon.
So, too soon. So we'll have Jamie and Stephanie and Elaine, okay?
Thank you.
All right, and then I'm going to move up one more, and that is F, the consideration of teacher leave request. Article 15, extended leaves of absence. Section J, agreement between the Dudley-Charlton Regional School District and the Dudley-Charlton Teachers Association, 2016-2019. And you do have in your packet the literature on this, so I won't have to repeat it. This is the way I'm going to do it. I'm going to entertain a motion to approve. We'll have a discussion. We'll take a vote, see if it goes through, okay? So I'm going to entertain a motion to approve this teacher's request for the leave of absence. Okay, do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, discussion. Any discussion?
The person here.
What?
Is the person here?
I don't know.
Is the person here?
Would you like to come up,
Why don't you come up?
Mrs.?
We might have some,
Is it, I don't know, I'm going to pronounce your name, is it Chupka? Okay. And if you want to speak to us, you can.
Certainly. So I shared some information regarding a request to take time outside of the normal vacation schedule. I explained what happened to me last year, and so I'm respectfully requesting to be able to take a special vacation to celebrate with my family.
Okay. Do you have any more discussion, questions for her before we take a vote on it? No? Okay, all in favor?
Thank you.
Okay, motion carries, it's unanimous.
Thank you very
Okay.
much. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Bring back
All right. Director of Finance Operations, Rich.
Thank you very much. We have a couple of donations this evening. Charlton Elementary School received a donation of $500 from Margaret Paquette. Dudley Middle School received a donation of $150 from John and Jean Hickey, and $2,000 from P&P General Contractors, specifically to be used for children in need. Dudley Elementary School received a donation of $1,514.40 from Box Tops. Charlton Middle School received a donation of $308.25 from the Friends of John Pear Foundation to be used to offset delinquent lunch charges, specifically for any balances for families who currently qualify for free and/or reduced lunch.
Okay, I'll entertain a motion to accept all the donations that Rich has gone over.
So moved.
Discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
I had a question.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Now
Can I
I'm rushing.
just inquire about delinquent lunch charges for families who currently qualify for free and reduced lunch? Are these people that qualify that are not accessing the program, that there's a delinquent lunch balance?
It may be that they failed to fill out the application either at the start of the year or when their last year's application expired. There may be a time delay between those things, and those charges are, even though they qualify, if they don't have appropriate paperwork in hand, they are legitimate charges.
Could I ask another question? Is the reduced lunch program something that people need to apply for at the beginning of every school year if they've already been accepted into the program?
Yes, the application is good for 1 year. We send those applications out as a renewal to everybody. Generally, that application from the previous year stands for an additional 30 days or the first month of the school year.
Okay.
But they still need to fill it out each and every year.
Okay, thank you.
Any other discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Motion carries, it's unanimous.
Thank you. A small disposal of an item. At Shepherd Hill, they have a 30-year-old table saw that they ask be declared surplus for disposal. It has not been used in a decade.
Okay. I'll entertain a motion to declare the table saw as surplus.
Second.
Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Motion carries, it's unanimous.
Thank you. The saw did live and serve its purpose for a very long time for the district. High school network wiring project. The committee had, I think at the October meeting, discussed the commitment of the remaining capital funds from this year to rewire the high school. We do have bids in hand now. The low bid was from Ockers, who actually performed the summer wiring project at the other 6 schools for $329,000. We have an approximate balance of $248,000 available from the capital assessments for wiring, leaving a shortfall of $81,000. I recommend that school choice funds be used to offset this shortfall and just as information to the school committee, especially since we've talked about school choice funds and the balances over the last 2 meetings. We would be looking to balance that off so that we don't spend $81,000 additional dollars from school choice, but simply spend what we were planning on. And this $81,000 to be offset with the E-rate funds that we get back from the 6 schools that we've done previously.
Okay.
So it's really just a balancing act at the end of the year. But I would ask school committee to approve the
The
bid.
shortfall.
The bid specifically.
Oh, okay.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion on it? Seeing none, all in favor? Motion carries, it's unanimous.
And that's a once-in-a-generation type project, and we've done all 7 schools this year, so that's really great news for us. Next item is preschool fees. The preschool programs would like to start to prepare and get paperwork out for the upcoming year. The current cost for preschool is $1,000 for a year-long 2-day, half-day program. The fees were raised from $800 to $1,000 2 years ago. In conversations with Dr. Nash and Special Ed Director Lorinda Allen, we feel the fees are appropriate for our program in light of other programs in the other area. We ask school committee for direction on fees for the upcoming year.
So if you feel they're adequate, then we should keep them as is, right?
That would be our recommendation, yes.
Okay. So do we need a vote on that?
Unless you want to change it.
Okay. I don't think we should change it, we'll leave it.
What, I'm sorry, you don't feel that we should go up to 1,000?
We're currently at
And we
1,000.
currently went up to 1,000 2 years
Okay.
ago. And it's adequate, they said right now. They don't want to raise it anymore, the seat for next time.
Okay, I think we're underpriced. But
Based on what we see from other public schools, we're right in that.
public schools,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
Okay, that's fine.
Can I ask a question through the
Go
chair?
ahead.
Have you ever looked at doing full days instead of half days?
I think many different configurations of preschool have been looked at over the years. And I suspect that Director Allen will have some information in her renewal plan, and certainly is an area that we need to take a look at as we go forward.
That's the conversation that I hear from many parents. It's just a challenge with 2 working parents to get their children for half days.
Yep.
So we will keep it the same.
Okay. And then the question was raised on food service as it relates to the federal shutdown. I did include an email from the state back when the shutdown started. They have funding in hand to continue reimbursements through next month. I don't think there was ever an anticipation that the federal shutdown would go on for so long, And as a matter of fact, just in the past couple of days, there's been some guidance about free and reduced lunch applications for those people that may be affected by the federal shutdown. Unfortunately, the guidance remains that those applications are based on an annual income. But if the federal shutdown were to go on long enough and we have 2 months of zero income, well, clearly those people would qualify, and once the shutdown ended, would have to, take back their free application, if you will. But that was just information that was requested.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That concludes your,
That's all I have for this evening,
Thank
but I believe there's.
Can I ask, do we know how many families are affected?
Uh,
That might-
No, we would have no way of knowing that unless they identified themselves.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
okay, Budget and Finance Subcommittee report, Elaine.
The Budget and Finance Subcommittee met yesterday, and the focus of our topic was capital planning. So we had previously talked to you about researching the situation regarding the 2 roofs at our middle schools. At this point in time, there has been information presented that creates a conundrum, if you want to say. We brought in 2 companies and had completely opposite views as to whether or not we could do a restoration or we needed to do replacement. So Dr. Nash and Mr. Matthew have recommended that we look for a third neutral party to come in and assess the situation. So one of the companies that Mr. Matthew had already begun conversation with is the possible company that we would consider for using a full facilities study. So we looking at possibly using this company so we could look at this plus see how they would be for the full study program. So Mr. Matthew is using that company and other looking for referrals from our current roof repair company to give us that third-party voice. So based on that scenario, we will not be going forward with any recommendation for any type of monetary impact to the towns for the roofs at this point in time. We need to do further study on that. So we also are looking at the process regarding the moving forward with the full study as to what that would be. And I think third-party capital planning, and we are meeting again next Tuesday, and the focus of that meeting on Tuesday is specifically budget.
Thank you. Any
Okay.
questions
Well,
for
I
Elaine?
have Mr. Math explain how E-rates, does everyone know how an E-rate program works? Because if not, he'll explain it to you. Do you want him to explain it?
Basically, E-rate has 2 different categories. One is kind of ongoing annual operating expenses that we get reimbursed 60% for, and that is a credit that we can actually take on our bills.
Is this from the government?
Yes,
Okay.
federal government
Okay.
specifically.
They're in control of technology.
Yeah, because I did look it up.
Technology and communications, that's correct. The second phase is what we're using to offset, or that we'll get reimbursed for from the federal government, hopefully in a timely manner, despite the shutdown, to do the wiring projects, and where we have the expectation of receiving upwards of about $350,000 total in reimbursement from the federal government over the course of those 2 phases for us.
Any other questions? Okay. Report of the Special Education Director, 3-year renewal and revitalization plan. Lorinda?
Good evening. Thank
Good
you
evening.
for letting me come and share tonight. I really appreciate it, and I would ask that as I share this plan, that this is something that you might consider voting to approve, because I would love to have your support as we move forward with the next few years. So last fall, I came and I shared an MCAS presentation with you, which was the first presentation I made to you as Special Education Director, and it was rather discouraging. And I don't remember if you remember, as I stood up here, that while I shared my concerns with you, I also shared my commitment to this population of students and said something needs to change. So this is my plan for change, but it's not just my plan. I have the entire administration behind me. The past 6 months, we've been talking about things. I've had the privilege to talk to parents. Many of the CPAC parents are here tonight. I've had the chance to talk to classroom teachers, to the team chairs. And so I feel like I've really tried to listen to the voice of the concerns that are out there, but also different people's ideas. So that's what I want to share with you tonight. So you have 2 documents. One in your packet is just a copy of the PowerPoint. The other one that has the little arrows, this is just a reference sheet. It has the same information. They're just set up a little bit differently. The one with the arrows is set up in a linear format by year, for those of you that think sequentially what's going to happen each year. And then my presentation tonight is more by focus area. So that's where we'll start. And see, Jamie, I made you feel better. I'm popping the cloth on this side too. So what our objective is, as far as I'm sitting in this seat for as long as that I'm able to do that, is to provide equity and excellence for every child every day. And what that means to me is we need to be doing everything we can to move every student forward to full independence by adulthood, whatever that means for that child, whether that means they want to go to college, whether that means they're going to go to the workforce, whether they're going to go to the military, whether they're going to learn to live in a group home, whatever independence for them means. Years ago, the special ed law was just about access. And throughout the years, it's changed, and it's no longer just about access, but with No Child Left Behind, it became about proficiency against the standards. And every child is measured against those standards. And we want to provide them rigor and opportunities as well. So how we hope to do this, I've kind of divided it into 3 sort of buckets or 3 focus areas. So preparation, which would include any trainings, any behind-the-scenes planning, paradigm shifts for our staff. Personnel, how do we provide effectiveness and efficiency of the staff we have through maybe some possible restructuring. And then programming, do we need to change our delivery model of service, or do we need to change the materials that we use? So again, I've alluded to the past 6 months. We've had lots of chances to observe and to do reviews, and I've been into classrooms, we've been into therapy sessions, I've looked at IEPs and schedules, class compositions, assessment results. I've done that with our team chairs, I've done that with our administration team, I've done that with some outside consultants who've come in. And those are the details that have kind of pulled together to give us this overview. So what you're going to hear tonight is just an overview of the next 3 years, 3 fiscal years. You'll hear a lot more specific details when I do my budget presentation on February 6th, but this will kind of give you hopefully the big picture and where we're trying to head. So we had a couple program evaluations done this year. I don't know if you're aware that the state requires special education programs to have a minimum of 1 program evaluation each year. It could be for any department, any section of special ed. This year we had Dr. Kathy Picaro come in. She is an educational consultant who did a program review of the high school. And we also had Pamela Travers come in, who was a former special education director at Dover Sherborne, and she did a program review of some of our elementary programs. And one of the things that became really apparent to them really quickly was inequity in a lot of our classrooms, especially at the secondary level, so grades 7 through 12, where we did what we were calling inclusion, but our inclusion model was a content-trained teacher, so for example, a teacher trained in history, a teacher certified in English, certified in math, with an instructional assistant in them. And for as wonderful and kind and compassionate and bright and caring and dedicated as our paraprofessionals are, it's not the same as having a teacher who is certified and has that content knowledge. And what these observers or evaluators came in, and when they began to talk to us, one of the things that they noticed right away that was not giving our students equity was for a true co-teaching model where we have a content-based teacher who's certified and a special education teacher who's certified. The content-based teacher knows, again, the content, the algebra, the math, the geometry, the history, versus the special ed teacher who knows the strategies to help the students access that. So that was one area of inequity that we looked at. And so we began to talk about that more, and this dates all the way back to a special education advisory from the state back in 2015. And again, it talks specifically to the fact that as wonderful as instructional assistants are, and as much as they have a place with certain students and in certain roles, that to just throw them into a classroom and expect them to be able to co-teach is not the most effective use of the paraprofessional, nor is it giving the students the best access to a really strong education. So that was one of the things we wanted to look at. This again just refers to the inclusive practices from DESE, and it talks about moving to a true inclusive practice model. And again, I'm excited to say that one of the things you will see when budget season comes out is that all the administration team, all the principals, district administrators are on board with moving towards inclusive practices and really being committed to that, being committed to a service delivery model of co-teaching and figuring out bit by bit how we get to that place. Inclusive practices have documented results. This quote in there again from DESE Guidebook for Inclusive Practices just talks about that. A student who is full-time in a gen ed setting, again with that support, is nearly 5 times more likely to graduate high school in 4 years or fewer than similar students. And again, you have one of those advisories, I believe, in your packet that was sent to you, and the reference is also there. So one of the things, again, that we've started to do to move towards this co-teaching delivery model is we've done some initial co-teaching training. We've sent a few teachers out, and we've also had Dr. Picaro come and do an initial session with grades 9 and 10 and the special education teachers at the high school. That's the first place that we want to start. We are starting at several different schools, but the high school, we're going to lose them first. That we need to get to them first. So we've made a commitment next year to do full co-teaching in the grades 9 and 10. Again, we're going to continue in FY 2021 and 22 the co-teaching training, and again, reallocating resources so that we can continue to add special education teachers into our schools. Another area we looked at and will continue to look at is our substantially separate classrooms. And Mrs. Pam Travers that I mentioned, the retired special education director from Dover Sherborne, was one of the people that has gone into a couple of our elementary classrooms to begin this observation. And what we were noticing there is that when we look historically, those programs were added for the population of students who had autism. That was a growing population in our town, and we began the program to service those types of students. And as the program's grown and as our communities have changed and we've had more and more students come, these classrooms have absorbed lots of students. And they've done a great job. The teachers there have done a wonderful job meeting their needs. They've been servicing students with autism, students who are nonverbal, students with Down syndrome, intellectual impairments, brain trauma, some of our medically challenged students. But we never really defined those programs after the first initial years. And so what we'd like to do is to continue to create program descriptions. And our substantially separate teachers and our team chairpersons have already begun to meet to do this. And what this just does is by restructuring it, we can talk about various approaches. We can talk about students who work best with an applied behavioral analysis approach, or a student who might work best for discrete trials, or in a small group. And then that allows us to more effectively assign teachers with various skill sets to provide appropriate opportunities for generalization for those students, and take them by groups into places where they can gain some real learning in a general education setting, as opposed to accessing general education simply for social opportunities. Right now, our 3 Charlton schools and Mason Road and Shepherd Hill all have a substantially separate program of some type. Some of our schools have 2 of them. Dudley Elementary and Dudley Middle School do not have any type substantially separate programs at this point in time. So one of the conversations that we've had is, do we provide a continuum of service at Dudley Elementary and Dudley Middle for those students who live in Dudley? Because right now, if they're in grades 2 through 8, they are bused to Charlton, to Heritage School and to Charlton Middle School. And it's great and it's an effective program, but do our numbers support having them be in their own town? Are there advantages to that? The other piece is, do we look at a different type of substantially separate program to be in that town, to be in Dudley, to be in those schools? Is there a different type of population that needs to be serviced? So that's something we'll look at as well. Another area that we have begun to look at is team chairpersons. And the team chairperson, we have 6 building-based team chairpersons right now. We have 5 that are serving. We have 1 that left us this fall and that has not been replaced. So we have 6 on paper, but 5 who are serving. And again, these are wonderful professional people that are on the teacher contract. But the work that they do is they sit at a table and they run a team chair meeting, they run an IEP meeting, and they're responsible for committing your district resources. They have all, as I said, done a super job for it, but it's very difficult to have them be able to help supervise and guide teachers who are coming to the table when they're on the same teacher contract as them. They kind of lose that little piece of being able to help give guidance for them. So what we would like to do, again, is to restructure those positions to make them district-based administrators. It would give us the ability to have consistency of practices under the special education director, as opposed to reporting to 6 different principals. They would certainly need administrative certifications, and they would need to be impact bargained out from the contract. So again, that's something that when budget comes up, we'll be sharing some more details about how we think that could work. But again, by moving them to an administrative position, much like an assistant principal, it would give additional support to the principals as well, because it would allow them to help evaluate the special ed staff in their building and also would help provide coaching. They could go into the special education classrooms and share some things that they're seeing, be that objective eye.
Now, I just have a question.
Sure.
Because now we have department heads at the high school, and they supervise, so wouldn't they probably want to be in the administration because the team chairs are going there? I'm just thinking about the union
possibly.
part.
And again, I think it's going to depend, Mrs. O'Coin, how the job description is written and how that's classified when they impact bargain them out.
Yeah.
Again, I think their role differs a little bit from a department head in the terms that they're responsible for allocating your resources as a district and your budget anytime they sit at that table. You know, they're not allowed to, a team's decision is autonomous from me, autonomous from you as a school committee. So you really need to trust that the people that are sitting at that table understand the law, understand special ed, and when they're making a decision to commit resources, that they're doing it in everyone's best interest. So that's where I think it's a little bit different, is from that piece of it.
What kind of certification would they need in addition to what they have now?
Again, that would depend how we write it, but certainly a principal, assistant principal certificate, I would think would be appropriate. You know, certainly you could have a supervisor, director, but I don't foresee that for the evaluation purposes and for that type of a contract, they would need that. And again, that would be something in the job description we could certainly discuss. Another piece we looked at is the district behavioral supports. So currently, we have, right now, we have 1 district BCBA, that stands for a board certified behavioral analyst, and her current caseload is 52 students. That is not typically a direct service type job. It is a job where she consults to classroom teachers and special education teachers, creates behavior plans, does functional behavior assessments, and she also consults to the 9 sub-separate classrooms in the district. If you remember, we had a few years ago 2 district BCBAs in the district, and then one district BCBA resigned mid-year. That position was never refilled. But a recommended caseload, we had an organization called Teach Us who came in and did a program evaluation of this for us as well. Recommended caseload is 1 to 10. Now, personally, I don't know any schools anywhere near us that have that type of a caseload. But certainly this caseload.
Not like a special ed mandate.
No.
There's just a recommendation.
But, right, it's a recommendation, but certainly additional help would be appropriate. So again, we're talking about the addition of a second BCBA, and next week, or 2 weeks on the 6th, you will hear how, again, I think we can reallocate some funds to improve the efficiency and effectiveness and be able to add this second BCBA without needing additional monetary resources. The other thing that having a second BCBA is going to allow us to do is to build the capacity of our general education teachers and staff. And so part of what Sarah's job is now when she goes into classrooms is she tries to help our paraprofessionals and our classroom teachers implement the behavior plans. And sometimes they're very systematic. It often has ABA strategies that they need to be able to teach. And by having a second person, again, it would help us to be able to build the capacity of all our students. We talked about possibly putting another type of substantially separate room in Dudley L or Dudley Middle, either for continuity, or the other option that we need to consider would be a possible emotional or behavioral classroom. Sometimes they're connected together. My recommendation is that we look at them separate. I think students who face emotional difficulties and students who face behavioral difficulties can sometimes present very differently. Putting them together is not always the best, most appropriate way to meet their needs. So again, looking at some potential student numbers, we have some phenomenal mental health support staff in our buildings. We have guidance counselors and psychologists and school adjustment counselors up at the high school. But again, that's a growing population, and a lot of our students who we place out of district, we are placing because the dysregulation is so high. And having a support system like this would again allow them to come back, to be with their peers, to be with people that they're in their neighborhoods with and they interact with, and could really be a nice benefit to our students as well. Our 5th area is academic support services. Currently, our secondary schools offer academic support as a class. So what this is if a student is on an individualized education plan, and they need additional reinforcement, either for study skills, to know how to get homework done, for executive functioning, they can have what they call academic support services. It might be twice a week, it might be 4 times a week, it might be every day. And these are graded. Well, the state says that if you have a course that's graded, there needs to be an established curriculum for them. And while ours is, we do have a curriculum, but it's not vertically aligned and it's not systematic to teach these students the skills. So again, that's something that with minimal cost, we can work together to make sure that there's a vertically aligned curriculum that's really going to meet the standards of what happens in those classrooms. They're also, I'm excited, Mr. Chaplin is also working with his staff to revamp Shepherd Hill's classes. Right now, academic support is in a classroom. He wants to create an academic support center that would serve both general education and special education students. It would be staffed with a general ed teacher and a special education teacher. Again, they can rotate. We're working out logistics of what that looks like. It could have peer models in it. But again, access for kids to just be included and be part of it so that we're supporting all kids and not singling kids out who just need that particular support. District mental health and special ed assessment supports. These are things that, again, we've talked about throughout our strategic planning. Mental health supports has been a big thing. So one of the things next year I think we need to look at when we do our program evaluations is an evaluation of our building-based school psychologists, school adjustment counselors, and guidance counselors. We really have some strong people in those roles, but when you compare what we have to other districts, our numbers for psychologists are high. And we brought our psychologists on before we had school adjustment counselors. And they're trained very differently, and they serve very different roles. So I think we need to have some neutral parties, again, come in, look at those areas and say, are we utilizing these people? Are these the best people, not as people, but as roles, to serve the children in this way? Or would it be better to utilize our psychologists for testing and assessments, and to use our school adjustment counselors as those people that can meet the needs of the kids, who can find the outside resources and pair them up for people that can help them? And then where does the guidance counselors, where do they fit into that? Originally, way back when, the state had come up with a 6 through 12 guidance counselor model, because people were waiting until kids were too far into high school to figure out what they wanted to do vocationally. Is that still the best model? Or could we swap some guidance counselors for more effectively using them for school adjustment counselors? So that's something next year that I think we really need to get a good handle on and to look at. Again, it talks about just how we could potentially restructure things, and for very minimal cost or even break-even cost, we could provide services in a different way for our students. 2 areas left. I say 2 areas left, maybe 4, but we're getting to the end. Speech and language services. Last year, when I was looking at some data, it really concerned me that the caseload for students who were picked up for speech and language services at the high school doubled. Usually, when you think of speech and language, students tend to wean off of that. And so I was really concerned why that has doubled. I have not been able to look at it in depth yet, because there's been too many other fires that have needed to be put out. But again, that's something that need a restructuring of the services and the staffing? Or are we finding that so many language-based students need that continuing support for comprehension services that we need to build somehow a different program? Do we need to build a language-based classroom? Do we need to train teachers differently? So that's a piece that we need to look at. Reading interventions and support, and this piggybacks right off of general education. So looking at our certified reading specialists providing instruction to all students. In some schools, what we believe is happening is that the reading specialists are sort of seen as a tier. So the special education students are seen by a special education teacher, and the reading specialist teaches those students who maybe need the next level of support. And so the question being, again, back to that content, and who's best equipped to teach content. And if a reading specialist has reading training, and a special education teacher has strategy training, is there some reason our reading specialists aren't teaching our special ed kids? Does every school have teachers that are certified in various programs? We have several teachers that are trained in Wilson. We have a few that are trained in Linda Mood Bell. But you'll find that research says now, especially for students that are diagnosed as dyslexic, it depends what their profile of dyslexia is. Is it a processing issue? Is it a memory issue? And those students respond better. Every student's not going to respond well to Wilson. Some students need something different. And so what do we have for various research-based programs throughout our arsenal of interventions that we can use? And then, again, getting our staff trained in those programs as needed. The integrated preschool programs, which you had asked about earlier, we want to look at that again. We had looked at, Mrs. Seibel, you may know, was it about 2 years ago we looked at the preschool programs? Or Mrs. Pacheco, I think.
Yes.
I believe it was 2 years ago.
Survey and asked parents, and we thought too that we should extend it. And because we were only thinking of extending it to the school day and not further, parents were not interested in it because they wanted longer days to accommodate their work schedule.
So before and after school. And so again, looking at, are the 2.5 days per week still the most effective? And are the tuition prices appropriate? And I think when it comes to looking at integrated preschool, that's a place where we also pull gen ed into it, because we have our special education students. And again, while 2 half-days per week, or 4 half-days per week, or 4 full days per week, whatever they're getting, may benefit them and provide them with a free and appropriate education. Excuse me. We also have our general education population that's paying the tuition to come. So those two things piggyback. And finally, talking about a mathematics intervention program. So just like the reading that we talked about, talking about mathematics interventions for students with special needs. Excuse me. How do we give them that double dose? If the students have a gap, how do we go back and fill in the thing that they've missed? How do we make sure, if we're giving everybody that rigor and we want to give people that proficiency, how do we help our special education students access algebra? How do we help them be able to get the content in geometry in some of those more difficult classes? And looking at what that looks like. And then finally, our occupational and physical therapy program evaluations, same type of thing as our special education, our speech and language programs, looking at those and how are they best functioning, having somebody come in from the outside and see if they need to be redesigned or changed in any way. So again, just going back to that the goal of this whole program is to provide equity and excellence for every child every day. And again, I think it's reallocating funds, doing some restructuring so that we can look at efficiency of services and effectiveness. And so that's our goal, and like I said, our administration team is fully on board with doing what we need to do to provide kids the best. And so I would just thank you for your time and ask if you have any questions.
Any questions?
Nice job.
Yeah.
Very
Very
thorough.
nice.
It's very thorough.
You can go first if you'd like.
I have a list.
Mine is a lot broader, so.
There you go.
So at the beginning of this, you said you'd hope that we would be able to review this to consider a possible vote. And I guess, although it was a ton of work to put in and it would result in a lot of change, a lot of your presentation to me seemed like we have to evaluate it to determine if a restructure is necessary. So I'm trying to figure out what it is that you're specifically asking us to consider a vote on, because the PowerPoint presentation seemed like you're collecting data and you might bring forth some suggestions at the budget meeting that we could consider based on the evidence that you've already been able to collect, and yet there's a lot more evidence that needs to come forth.
Sure. So I think the overall driving force is that move towards equity and excellence, the move towards inclusive practices, and how this all connects to inclusive practices. And basically, do we have your support to continue looking at these areas and to continue to fine tune? And certainly, as we do program evaluations, we'll come back to the table, we'll share with you. But to kind of just have a big picture that, yeah, this sounds like a good way to go, to be doing these program evaluations, to spread them out. You might feel differently. You might say, no, we think every program evaluation should be front-loaded before we do anything else. So I guess that's kind of what I was looking for with that.
Follow it up if you don't mind. So I also feel like this package presentation comes across as it's across the board, it's across all age groups and packages them into one, where I think my own opinion is it's very different based on the age of the students that we're talking about. And sometimes it probably is appropriate to integrate certain children in certain scenarios. And then there are times where it's probably not as appropriate to do so. And it may depend on what we're talking about, and it may depend on the age of the child. And I have fear that it's a package deal, that we're gonna put it all together and all the ages are just gonna kind of.
So my apologies, Jamie, if it came across that way. So while this is a K-12 initiative, certainly we are going to have all realms of realms of service delivery, I should say. So while we want to move towards inclusion and a better co-teaching model, there will still need to be the resource classrooms for some students. There will still need to be the sub-separate classrooms for some students. And I would venture to say it's not so much age of a child, but it's the individual team decision on what a child needs.
Okay.
So even though we're saying we want to head it this way, there's a lot of IEPs that their student services aren't written that way. So just because we're creating this model doesn't mean those students absolutely all of a sudden have to fit that mold. If the team has these discussions and they feel like, yes, this service delivery option is something that's really going to be the most appropriate, least restrictive environment for my child, the team could make that decision to put it there. But what we want to do is just make sure that we have, a wealth of options for our students to go into and not be limited.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay. First, let me just say that this is a very long overdue analysis and assessment of the program, so I thank you because
welcome.
it is going to be a monumentous task to undertake the assessments that are necessary. So I do appreciate that. I would be very interested in having copies of the studies
Sure.
that you've looked at and have been done. So there's just a couple of things that I want to just say from my perspective, because I've been in the special education realm for 12 years. Inclusion's an interesting term because it can either be a noun, it can be an adjective, or it can be a verb.
Right.
And it's mostly used as a noun. It's very rarely used as a verb. And if we're moving in that forum of having inclusion be an active thing, then I think we're doing our students a great service going forward. Just a couple of points, and I've got notes in both places that I really want to look at this. One of the things that I don't see in your plan that I think is a very important piece of the equation is transition specialist, because transition begins with the IEP when a student turns 14. And typically, those conversations are not happening until students are at the high school. It's too late to put in place everything that needs to be in place for students if we're waiting. So I'd like to have that some way work its way into your analysis. In relation to language-based classrooms, I know that we had many conversations about this with our previous superintendent when we would come back from conference and had been to various workshops regarding this. And when we're looking at those students, if you're looking at students with language-based disability and it impacts 1 in 5 students, and we don't have a language-based program within our district, it really needs to be a high priority that we do that. But we need to be looking at evidence-based programs and not research-based programs. I'm hoping that in part of your analysis with the consultants that you're working with, that we're looking at a talent list of our special education staff and specialists, because one of the greatest ways to derail a student's success is not having continuity of programming as students move from building to building. So just had a couple of, I just want to just check to see if I can look, but you've inspired me to probably have a conversation with you to look at some things differently. But one of the other points that I really wanted to emphasize was with students that are looking for academic support. So if we look at our numbers of sub-separate students versus students that are in an inclusion piece, they're partially or fully included. One of the greatest derailments to those students' success are the soft skills that are not content-based, but are those skills that are generally in the realm of executive function. So if we're looking at curriculum, are we looking at curriculum with that type of alignment beginning at upper elementary, middle school? Because that's where that foundation needs to be established.
Exactly, and to make sure it's vertically following them all the way.
Correct. So that would be great. And then I know Mrs. Antossi is a certified reading specialist, so she might have some questions to go on that. So I'm going to leave that one for her. But I'll follow up with you if we could have a conversation. I would like that.
I actually didn't have any questions about the reading specialist, but I did want to comment that I applaud you for digging so deep into this. It's a big elephant to take apart, and it's really important, as you said, to look at the positions that are necessary to service our kids, not necessarily the people that are in them right now, and the better use of them. So I'm really happy that you're doing this, and it's a lot of work, and
Thank you. Oh, it's a team effort, that's for sure.
Madam Chair.
Go
I believe our CPAC co-chair is in the room, and I think she may have a question. Do you have any questions? No. Would it be okay if she?
Fine. I
Okay.
didn't,
Thank you.
you can come up to the table. Do you have a question for us?
I just have one quick question. I think your PowerPoint was very thorough. Thank you so much. I appreciate all the research that you've put in. And I also appreciate taking some of the input and concerns from the parents in our community, especially from our CPAC organization. We appreciate your support so much. A couple questions about your co-teaching initiative that you're thinking about.
Sure.
Were you thinking of maybe having a co-teaching model in every building per grade level? And were you possibly thinking of combining some of those co-teaching classrooms with a smaller size class to support some of the higher needs special ed kids, potentially pulling them out of some separate classrooms?
So I will probably have more details for you on the budget presentation on the 6th.
Okay.
But I can tell you right now that every building is committed to doing it at some grade level in some fashion next year. 9th and 10th grade at the high school I know is a definite commitment, and I believe the other principals are still determining which grade. We're gonna have some individual meetings this week with them to know what that rollout's gonna look like, and hopefully I can share more with that piece. And I know that the conversation about class size has been an initial discussion. And again, I don't know that until they figure out what grade they want to initially try this in, that we can necessarily answer that question yet either. So I'm not trying to evade it, but we just don't have enough information at this point.
Okay, thank you, I appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Lorinda, very good.
Anything
Very
else?
well done. Do you need a vote to support this for you to go forward? Is that what you want?
I just would like that. I guess I feel like with changes in leadership, we never know who's sitting in what chairs. And I guess I feel like if I have the school committee's backing that, yes, we need to continue looking at this, it would just kind of be a good direction for the
Okay.
district.
Do you have another question?
No, I'll ask her separately.
You're all set.
I'll make
So-
a motion to accept the plan presented tonight by the special ed department.
second.
Any more discussion? Elaine?
Clarification? I think the motion should be that
It's a
we're making a motion in support of the plan
Right.
presented tonight, because I think the plan is going to be very fluid as
Right.
Right, it's
Mrs.
gonna
Allen
need to be-
obtains more information, so just a vote of
So
support
we're
to
not
continue.
adopting it
It's a
this
plan.
evening, we're supporting,
Right.
backing you up on it. Okay? Sandy, you got that? Any other discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Motion carries, it's unanimous.
Thank you.
Nice job.
Okay, I just don't want to skip anything. Consideration to amend 2019, 2020. Did I skip something?
The policy review.
Oh, okay. Report of the Policy Review Subcommittee, amendment of policy GCG, first reading, and Mary, you're
Okay.
going to speak to that.
So first, I want to just update the committee that we are taking a different approach for reviewing the policies from the original chart that was passed out months ago, because MASC has a number of policies, 99 or more, that are required for legal updates. And so we have to address those first. The other policies that we're looking at first are anything that is causing difficulty in doing business. So there have been a couple, and Dr. Nash was going to speak to one tonight, but she'll bring it up at the next meeting, that we're addressing as well, because it's causing some difficulties. But that being said, the substitute teacher policy, you'll see in your packet that we did go back to the the same verbiage. We had changed extended, long-term substitute to extended employment, and we went back to that because that seemed to be the preference of the committee. We took the rate table out of the policy, and that is going to be a separate set of rates that will be held in the superintendent's office. That way it doesn't have to always come back to the school committee. And you'll see the changes in bold. We have 3 classifications: associate's degree or equivalent, and we put that in for the purposes of somebody that's in school that comes back for winter break or something and substitutes for a while. But we did want to say or equivalent because we want qualified people in front of our kids. BA, BS, masters, and certified licensed. In item B, we changed it back to long-term substitute, and we changed the 45 days to 30 days, replacing a single teacher, but not retroactive. And then they would be paid on the per diem salary schedule, and we took out the C below because that will be separate. Okay. In item C, we have a full-year substitute is an individual who is hired in a full-year position for a single teacher. And we did add that the full-year substitute will be eligible for health benefits, whatever those health benefits are required by law. And then item D, we took out an extended employment verbiage and changed it back to a long-term substitute. And with school committee approval, the superintendent has the ability to place a full-year substitute on a different per diem rate in extenuating circumstances. And that's for cases where it's very difficult to get a particular skill set. Okay. Item E, we changed extended employment to long-term substitutes. And that is about it with that one. And then you'll see on the rate chart, on the substitute rate chart, per the last meeting, we increased the proposed substitute rates by $5, which makes us very competitive amongst other districts in our neighboring towns. There is a challenge that we do face, and aside from this, and that is the antiquated way that we actually assign substitutes. Other districts near us have an automated system where substitute teachers can go on and they can choose which district they want to work for at any given time. Whereas in our district, they get manual calls, and a lot of times the same substitute teachers get called, and other teachers don't get called at all. So it's really kind of antiquated. So at some point, we should probably look at getting on board with the automated method as well.
Sounds
And that would make us a little bit more competitive. So I put this before you for first reading.
I just have 3 quick questions.
Absolutely.
Quick this
Sure.
time. In B, on the second line, it should be changed to long-term sub. See, it still says extended employment.
Sure, okay.
Change that. I just was my own curiosity. We changed it to 30 days up above. Are we keeping it 45? And E, we didn't change that to 30. About the 45 cumulative. Since we changed it
Yeah.
to 30, but we can
No,
still keep
we-
it 45.
We decided that we wanted to keep that,
Okay.
well, we suggested
Yep.
that we wanted to keep that for 45
Okay.
cumulative days,
Okay.
because what we're trying to do is promote commitment to the district.
Okay. My other thing on that part, since it has a money issue in that, should that be put on a different table, $100? And just say they will receive a bonus or something? Since we try to keep all money out of this, should we take the 100 out of
We
there?
could put that in the rate table.
I think, don't you be better, then we wouldn't have to change if you decide to go up. That way you don't have to, so you just say, we'll be given a reward or something, and then
Receive a, how do you want to word that?
bonus or
Just
something?
End of year bonus.
An end of year bonus?
bonus, yeah.
End of
And then
year
you have-
attendance, though you have.
And then put on
is
the other
good,
page with the
and say-
money. Thank you for making those changes, because I think it improves it.
Okay.
So I will entertain a motion first to waive the reading of the policy, the whole policy. So do I have a motion to waive the reading of the policy?
So moved.
Second.
Discussion. Seeing none, all in favor? Okay. And then I'm going to entertain a motion for our first reading of the policy GCG.
I'll make that motion with those
With
few
the
amendments and changes.
Okay, do I have a second? Second. Okay, discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Motion carries, it's unanimous. So we have a policy.
One down. Only 300 to go.
All right.
Plus the 99 from the state.
Okay, now that will bring us to the calendar. Consideration to amend 2019-2020 school year calendar, and we do have the literature in our packet. And Mr. Chaplin, you'll probably want to just say something about it again, and then we'll take a vote on it.
Okay. So there was a narrative in your packet.
Yes, we do, and we
There was just an error.
understand it.
I didn't catch it the last time. I've been told when this happened before, it's happened a couple times in the past, and they moved it to the Sunday after Memorial Day, that one day where it's not June.
Right.
This happened to be the 31st that year. So when we called the DCU Center, they had already asked in for the 31st that year, because they have another school that they know the rotation. So I just asked that we just kind of make that adjustment. It's also a little bit of a horror show if we have it so close to MCAS finals and whatnot.
Yeah.
That 1 week buffer really does.
So that's good.
Yeah,
I make a
Thank
motion to amend the calendar to have graduation on, what's the date?
31st,
May 31st.
2020.
Do I have a second?
2019.
Okay, all in favor? Motion carries, it's unanimous. And we do have one request for home instruction, and it has been recommended by the superintendent. So I'm going to entertain a motion to approve that request for home instruction.
Second.
Okay, any discussion on it? Seeing none, all in favor? Motion carries, it's unanimous. And last, consideration of request to increase program fees, Shepherd Hill Regional High School Driver Education Program, and Scott is here this evening. Okay.
Hello, good evening. Scott Provo, Director of Driver Education. I put the packet together. I met with Dr. Nash a couple times to go through what was required. This, I guess, has never been done before. I'm a new director to the program, started in August, and we're very lucky to still have a program. So when I started doing some research, you see in the packet, we're trying to get our program a little more in volume, I will say, trying to get more kids interested to coming to our program instead of some of the private schools. We are, even with this increase, over $200 less than every private school.
Oh.
So if you look at the numbers there for the private schools, you have to add in all their license fees to their program fee to compare apples to apples, basically.
Now, I have a question on the
Sure.
first director's stipend.
Mhm.
So the current is $3,000, and you would like a $2,000 raise, so how do you rationalize that?
Well, the job is very different now. When we transitioned with the R&B, I don't know how many people know the whole R&B thing. You've probably been through it yourself with some of the changes, but it was pretty intense, and I pretty much signed my life away to that. If something wasn't right in our program, pretty sure I signed up that I go to jail. But there's a lot in there, there really was, and it was, even, I remember going through it, Mr. Desto, he's like, you sure you want to sign this? I'm like, well, we can't have a program if we don't do it. So it is really intense. It's a very big difference now. I was talking to Leo Byron, former director, and he goes, what? You have to do what? And he was just blown away by all the stuff that we have to do now that wasn't done when he was director and previously. It's extensive. You can find it on the state's R&B website. I can't even begin to go through all the details. There are things I found that when we get audited twice a year, and there are things, because we're a school, the auditor basically said, oh, it's okay. And we're supposed to have an office in view of the street, which we don't have the street, with signage and, office hours, and we're in a closet on the 3rd floor of Shepherd Hill, and he said, it's okay. Hopefully we have the same auditor next year. So there's a lot involved. So that's part of it. And we did a little research. We found Nantucket director. This is great. I'll take his salary. $25 an hour up to 40 hours a week. I did that math. $52,000 a year he can make as a director. Now, obviously, that's Nantucket, right? The schools that I could find, they have an administration fee at $25 an hour. They don't say how many hours. So we don't have any comparisons directly like us as a stipend. I did a little math. I think it's about $12 a day. If you work 4 hours a week at 25, it's $5,200. The job is a lot more than that if you did it hours. You know, I don't know. That's just my recommendation. I think it's fair. It's a year-long job. There's no time off. And anything that comes down the program, I get the call. I have to talk to whoever, wherever. Car got a flat. Got to make sure maintenance gets this car fixed. Has to be in service, etc. So.
I looked at all the numbers and they seem fair enough.
Yeah, I agree.
Anyone?
Just a general question. Is our driver's ed program only open to students that attend Shepherd Hill? Or is
Yeah.
it open to students that are within Charlton or Dudley?
So yes and no. We do allow outside students
Okay.
that don't go to Shepherd Hill. The issue is during the school year, our classes, the classroom session starts at 2:15.
Okay,
So no one else could get there.
okay.
So mainly if you're out of district, you come to our summer classes, and we
Okay.
do have some. One adjustment to that we've considered is starting our after-school class at 3:30 or 3. But that just means going until 6:30 or 7, so.
Now, I'm just curious as to whether or not we have a lot of students that live within the two towns that potentially go to Bay Path, that if you're looking to increase your numbers for participation, if at some point in time there was an open that we were taking residents of Charlton and Dudley into the program, we could buffer that. I was interested in the numbers of students that participate in the program, just to kind of look at the history if you're, you know, curious of whether or not, again, it's that convenience factor, you can't access it. I've always had that question asked as to whether or not I can go to Shepherd Hill, because I know the value that the program presents if I'm not attending Shepherd Hill. So if it were something that were open to students that perhaps were a Bay Path student, we might be able to increase the access to that program.
Right. And like I said, that would just require a little later starting time on classes.
Maybe not full year, but part of the year you could.
Right.
How long does a class,
So
I mean, is it weeks or?
It's 2 weeks, 3 hours a day. It's a required 30-hour class by the RMB.
So it's 5 days a week?
Yep. Right after school, 3 hours, 15-minute break.
Okay.
We do the summer class. We do 1 week, 6 hours a day. Just painful for the kids, but they like 1 week out of their life instead of 2.
And is that only run once during the summer? Or is it you running it multiple weeks?
We currently run the first week of August, first full week, and we're considering the last week of June if that snow stuff stays away.
Yeah.
Those are beneficial classes.
The only thing that I would really like is just some more specifics to the numbers and how the program runs.
Sure.
Aside, is the monetary thing is an easier conversation tonight, but just would like to know how.
Which numbers? Students or?
How the program runs, and then how many students that we have, and whether or not we're at capacity, or whether or not we can grow capacity.
So we have 3 vehicles. So
Mhm.
that's one of the limits we have. We have 6 drivers. So you can already see it's always a scheduling thing when you're going to drive. Basically, someone's driving every day. We have shifts of 2:30 to 4:30 and 5 to 7. And I and one other driver mainly drive the 5 to 7 shift.
Okay.
Mix it up. And then weekends is kind of a free-for-all, schedule the car and drive.
The other question that I had is, I know one of your recommendations as far as no-shows are concerned, is that a huge issue, or?
The
Becoming a
drivers
huge
really
issue?
want that. You know, you drive out, it would only be when it would be 1 student. So if
Okay.
you usually drive with 2, sometimes 3. So if you show up for 1 student and they don't, no show, no call, they'll get their charge. But you're not gonna get paid, you know what I mean? If you're driving with other students, you're getting paid for that time.
I see.
But if you drive a half an hour out to the other side of Charlton, no one's there,
Okay.
drive half an hour back, you just wasted an hour, you should've got paid, and the kid didn't even call you.
Okay.
So that's why they really thought that was
I understand it now, yeah.
I don't know how much it will happen. I have not had it happen to me
Okay,
yet, but the drivers have.
sure. Thank you.
Okay. Go ahead.
I had a couple things that I directed to Mr. Matthew today. One of the things that I wanted to kind of look at was what is the profitability of the program itself? And then, are we able to afford giving you, which I believe is well-deserved, a rate increase? And then one of the other things too is including other costs into it that we do face, such as the insurance for the cars, any extra, you mentioned, was it FICA that we have to pay? And just including other costs that we do incur for the program so that we understand how much this program costs.
Yes.
And what we're taking in and what we're
I
putting out.
have a little spreadsheet for that.
Thank
too.
you.
So if I can speak on those things. Those costs have never been directed towards the driver's ed program in the past. The total is about $6,000, about 4,200 for the insurances off the top of my head, maybe 45.
You didn't give me that number, you gave me that 2,500 was FICA, I thought?
No, FICA was about 1,100, I think.
Okay.
And the insurance was about $4,500. So all said and done, there's about $5,600 worth of district money that's used to support this program. And I don't think that's really unrealistic or unfair, because, it's our students that are getting the benefit of it. But if the school committee wished to, make this a truly 100% self-supporting program, then we'd have to look at charging those things there.
So those are fees I didn't know about, but besides that, everything else is paid by the fee of the students, which is what this is based on. So this you'd have to adjust to whatever numbers.
He's still paying those fees, the program's paying what he's asking for.
So it's just a comparison, top and bottom, of current and what it would be if proposed. One of the big things in the proposal is, currently, a student who takes the program, who gets their license with us, takes the road test with us, is technically paying $625 already, because the program fee is $550, and it's $75 to take the license. So they're already paying that. So we want to just market it as $625, you get the license road test, one license road test with it. We'll be the only program that does that. Nobody else does that. Look at all of them, that's always an extra fee. So that would be a nice way to promote business as well. And the only way we could really increase would be running more classes during the year to get more students, which is possible.
Thank you very much for doing this.
No problem.
And I think even with those costs, you're still running in a profit.
Right, and the profit, so every 3, I would say, I think we had said maybe 2, but every 3 years, we need to buy a car.
Right.
So those profits go right out the window.
Yeah.
And,
Right.
I think I don't know how it worked before, but we bought a car in 2018, also in 2017. A little too close together. So we need to spread that out and get on a schedule, and we've talked about that.
So I'll entertain a motion to approve the stipends as presented by Mr. Provost.
I'll make a motion.
Okay. Do I have a second?
Second.
More discussion,
Just
Elaine?
a clarification
ahead.
question. On the administrative secretary pay, on item 5, there isn't anyone doing that currently? And then there's a proposal to,
Yeah, so there is, and I don't know when it started. Lucille Graves, who works in our cafeteria, did that for years, and she resigned. And we just hired Anne Marie LaFond to do this. And the question was how they get paid. I said, I don't know. I'm new to this as well. And I guess when she met with Dr. Nash, or however it was figured out, it was on the secretary scale, which is,
do we know
I
how-
don't know why, because it's not really connected to driver's ed.
do we know how many hours it's being committed to this?
4 to 6 a week it was posted as. And it's been, let's see, so it's been 4 actually lately, so it's right in the right range so far.
So is this a new expense for us, or is this a current expense that just wasn't accounted for?
I think this is a new for his program, if it was under the
No,
secretary.
there was, as Mr. Provost had indicated, there was a previous appointment I had the appointment letter from 1987, I believe it was.
I remember
On
it.
parchment, on parchment with a quill?
Yes, exactly. I believe there were smoke signals as well. So clearly, there was a pay going to Mrs. Graves for the work that she was doing. It just wasn't accounted for, I guess, in
In the
whatever
program.
paperwork.
Yeah, it was never put in as, as a driver's
Right,
ed.
right. It's under the secretary.
So-
I just have a question. If she's working like 8 to 4, this must be after 4 o'clock, or she'd be getting double pay.
No, she works after her
So
hours.
she stays late and
Yep,
does
we're
that
very
after the
clear on
regular
that.
day?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, none of the hours with the driver's ed is during any business hours.
Okay.
Of your job with school driver.
Okay.
So clarification, are we paying, there's a range here, $15 to $25 per hour. Is Anne Marie being paid at her current hourly rate, or are we setting a rate for this position on our secretarial scale? How does that work?
All I know is what she signed for was $19.23 an hour, I believe.
Okay.
I'd have to look at the exact.
Which I believe is just the general administrative rate. Unlimited.
So that's why
So-
you put a little $15 to $25.
Right, well, I
She's
thought,
got
if we
19.
happen to get someone who had no experience at all, I think they should be on the lower end.
Okay.
Someone like Anne Marie who has experience,
Right,
we have like
so
great goals ahead
She's
of
got
us.
her rate of $19 and what? Is that an hour?
Per the wage and benefit agreement.
Good. It's under the wage and benefit agreement. Go
Madam
ahead.
Chair, I have a few questions.
Go ahead.
So, Mr. Provost,
Mhm.
how many other schools in our area do this? Or in the state do this?
Oh, in the state, I don't know. There are, you mean high schools?
Yes.
I know the closest one is Tantascwa.
Okay.
They're in, the last page, I think, is there, right up.
Okay, my concern is that we are paying the administrative assistant more per hour than we're paying Mr. Provost. And that I believe that he may need to be getting more money.
Which part do you mean?
I would like to table this so that maybe you could come back with a little bit of research on what other people with, like, who are also do this within different schools get for their pay,
Which pay?
like, for their
The
stipend.
director?
Yes, for your.
Oh, that's
for
the
your-
one where we don't have, like Tantascwa doesn't have a director.
They don't have a
The
director.
person who does their administrative duties as director gets $25 an hour.
Okay.
So
We have a motion on the floor, so we can't table it, but if he wants to come back for more money or
My
something.
opinion personally is the stipend's better. If you get into the hours and the state does what they just did and goes through an overhaul, then the hours go up. And then you're paying down the program because it's coming out of the program money.
Right.
So just my opinion, I think the stipend is better than the hourly.
Does this motion include all the increases like the driver's ed
Yes,
teachers?
the whole
Everything
program,
presented?
yeah,
Does
the
those aren't
stipends
just
that he
stipends?
presented to us.
But those are more than stipends, aren't they, are they all considered stipends?
It's all together. He has this, and
Well, I think that
we're
he
going to
said
approve
stipends.
anybody disapprove of any one of these?
Well, no, the motion said stipends. I think we should also say fees, because it also includes fees, not
It's
just stipends.
stipends, pay, and
Okay.
fees.
I think it should be stipend paid. Who made the motion? We should amend that.
I made it.
I think you should say what it says, fees, stipends, and pay for driver's ed program.
We'll amend it to that if my second will agree.
Absolutely.
Great.
The only one that I'm stuck on is the administrative secretary pay, as to whether or not we want to start, from 15 to current wage and benefit scale. So if we have a current employee who is at an hourly rate, we're at their hourly rate versus, I'm a little uncomfortable with 25, because does that prevent an employee from saying, well, I have experience, I should go more beyond my hourly rate because you have this range available? I'm just curious as to how best to word that, so, $15 to $25 to me is maybe somebody that's coming in that's from the outside, but are we aligning with our wage and benefit scale?
What category is it under, general instructors, general secretarial?
Yeah, exactly.
Because that's not printed out there, driver's ed.
No, it's not
Person.
listed as driver's ed.
Well, does it
just-
have to be under it?
It doesn't need to be. It's certainly something that we could look at when we open the wage and
We
benefit
should,
agreements.
yeah,
Because this
it
is
should
a
be separate. This way, like he said, if someone without experience came in, you would give $15 an hour. I mean, I don't think it should be aligned with the secretary's. I think it should be separate in the program.
It certainly can be.
So that's why we can vote the way it is. If we keep it that way. Any other discussion before we take a vote? Okay, all in favor? Motion carries, it's unanimous.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Mr. Provost did go through some more deals this fall and this summer as the RMV changed their requirements and their process. So I do commend them for sticking through this. It would have been easy to say, yeah, no, thanks, not my cup of tea, find somebody else.
There's been some challenges, thank you.
Yes, it has.
Okay, our next meeting dates, school committee meetings, Wednesday, February 13th. That'll be at the Shepherd Hill Regional High School, 7 p.m. Wednesday, February 27th, Charlton Middle School, 7 p.m. Budget and Finance Subcommittee, Tuesday, January 29th, Shepherd Hill Regional High School, 8:30 a.m. Policy Review Subcommittee, Wednesday, January 30th, Shepherd Hill Regional High School, 9 a.m. And I have others to add to it. February 6th, that will be at 7 o'clock, and that's going to be a presentation of our elementary principals and SPED that will be coming to us with their budgets. And are we having that in Sandy at Shepherd Hill? Are these meetings at Shepherd Hill? February 6th? Okay.
Are they all at Shepherd Hill? Can we negotiate it?
Well, the budget, we can.
Has been posted yet?
It hasn't been posted, Sandy? It has.
We can change it if you want.
And you've got both at Shepherd Hill? Yeah. Okay, February 7th, at 7 o'clock, and that will be the middle schools and Shepherd Hill coming to us, technology, and the curriculum director, and that will be at 7 o'clock. February 7th also, 4 to 6 is the negotiating, and is that right, Catherine? Yep. Okay. And February 27th, that's when we're going to vote on our budget, plus hopefully we will vote on the superintendent that evening. And February 28th is 4 to 6 negotiating, and is that all at Shepherd Hill too?
Yeah, we haven't, yep.
A lot at Shepherd Hill, I'm just saying, maybe we could think about that.
Yeah. Well, you're negotiating, you have to think about it. Oh.
No, I get that, but if we could make the February 6th budget meeting here, at least we will have
Right.
tried to
I'd
make it
yeah.
even.
Can you change that? She can change it, so
We're
we
changing, the 6th is here.
Well,
the 7th
which one do you want,
Well,
Jamie?
the other two are teacher negotiations.
No, I
so
mean,
they're-
which one do you want, Feb 6th or 7th here?
Right, I'm saying February 7th is a teacher negotiation too, so that has to be at Shepherd Hill.
Okay,
So it has
so
to be,
we'll have
it has to be
February
the
6th.
6th.
Okay, February 6th.
Thank you.
Okay? Anything else?
We have some more negotiating in March. Do you want to wait?
No, yeah, no, I'm not doing the March. Go
You
ahead.
want us to do the February 11th and 12th for the superintendent interviews?
So that is definite there, February 11th and 12th. And we're doing only one superintendent and one, oh, no, we're doing 2 and 2. But we don't have the date for the other. 7th and, remember? Did she actually give us the
The site
dates?
visit, the 11th and 12th.
I think we did the 11th and 12th, and then
Okay.
we were going to do a snow, we would move the snow dates to the 26th and 27th? The 25th and 26th, I'm sorry. And then I don't know whether or not,
Well, she thought this, I've got down 7th and 8th for those other two. She thought that.
Those are the site visits.
Those are the site
And the
visits.
interviews are 11th and 12th.
And 11th and 12th, and I've got those.
Yep, those are site
Yeah.
visits and interviews.
7th and 8th, and 11th and 12th.
And the 11th and 12th starts at 5, correct? for
Right.
both of them?
And where are the 11th and 12th?
Well, I think they're going to be at the interviews. Well, one is the music now. Oh, we're not
Over the
having that,
weekend.
that's on
It was over the
Saturday.
weekend.
Okay, are we having, it should be at Shepherd Hill, really, the interviews.
Well, they're gonna be
In the
site
district,
visits.
where the district comes together.
But they're gonna be site visits before.
Well, they're gonna
so-
go everywhere,
Right.
wherever,
Only, yeah.
where the central office is, I think the interview should be.
I'm just thinking about, and I don't know.
I'm gonna make the
No,
decision.
just, we might want to be thinking about food or their access to being able to go out and grabbing a bite to eat. So
Yeah.
I just,
Okay,
it was a random thought.
yeah, or maybe we can bring it in, bring
Right.
it into.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I think it should be at the central office where we all come together, okay? And our agenda items, future agenda items, policy review subcommittee, superintendent search, FY '20 budget presentations. Anybody want to add anything? Elaine?
Just, I know in Dr. Nash's, she had a possible Mars report on 213. I'd be interested in some follow-up on the driver's ed program, just on the statistical information. And then I know at one point in time I had talked about the possibility of getting some Google Drive doc training. And I don't know whether or not that's just a resource, so we could put, I mean, if we put 5 of us in the room, and I know Mrs. Carmignani has offered to, I'm a little lost with that process, so.
You probably don't have the app for it, Google Drive, that's all you have to have.
It's not that, it's just wondering about, we kind of talked about this as to way to manage documents and put notes, so
okay.
that if we're doing
Yeah.
it, it's all, I'm a
I'll come
Microsoft
in.
Office girl,
Yeah.
so I'm a
Good.
little lost with
That's
this.
good.
So,
If
if we
want
could,
training,
we could do that, that would be great.
Mrs. O'Coin, on February 6th, even though that's just a budget meeting, could we have an executive session afterwards? Because we will have had a negotiating meeting tomorrow, and if we don't meet again until the 13th, we will have a second one, and we haven't even discussed anything with the group. So could you throw it executive
Okay,
session at the
yeah,
end of February 6th?
February 6th, okay,
So we at least have some touch base with the rest of the committee.
okay,
Thanks.
good,
Dr. Nash may want to bring forward policy JF.
okay.
I don't think those letters are crazy. It's not as crazy. I don't think they're
All right, so at this time, we're going to enter into executive session to conduct strategy in the preparation for negotiations with union personnel or to conduct collective bargaining sessions on contract negotiations with union personnel, only to reconvene, take votes if necessary, and adjournment. Okay? I'm going to take a roll call.
I have to do it
Stephanie?
100 times.
Stephanie?
Oh, I got it
Stephanie?
this time. Woo,
Roll
you
call,
did.
yes?
I don't know why, it's so hard. I kept getting just fine.
Yes.
Comes back on.
Everybody. I know.
Now, my daughter
Yes.
just go like this, no, you
I
just
know.
have to do it sideways.
Yeah, I couldn't, I did it today, first time this afternoon, I couldn't get it.
No,
Did you get it?
no.
Okay.
Kathy just has a little bit. It's going to be short.
I'm a yes on the roll
And
call.
yes,
Yeah.
yes, yes, yes. Okay.